Check out carmarshal.com. The link is in the description. They help support us.
Bias on the bench. Florida's broken sentencing system embarrassed by the numbers. By Josh Salmon, Emily L. Ekas and Elizabeth Johnson. Herald Tribune. Until the 1980s, judges had wide discretion over everything from levying fines to imposing prison sentences. In search of consistency, Florida adopted sentencing guidelines in 1983. State lawmakers continued to tweak sentencing rules over the ensuing years, adding the Criminal Punishment Code in 1998 in hopes of further leveling the playing field. Prosecutors now assign points to defendants based on the severity of their crime, whether they have a prior record and the circumstances surrounding their arrest. Points are added for victim injuries or flashing a gun. Scores go up for violating probation or skipping court. Prosecutors then tally the numbers to determine the minimum sentence required by law. Judges may depart from the minimum if the defendant is cooperative or needs special treatment, but the law says any departures must be made in writing. In Citrus County, Leroy Waters scored 4.6 points when convicted of driving with a suspended license for the third time a felony. Waters obtained a public defender and signed a plea agreement that included jail time. Judge Richard Howard sentenced the 42-year-old black man to 89 days in county lockup. When Paul Penninger was busted for the same charge, he also went before Judge Howard. He used a court-appointed lawyer, pleaded no contest and scored a matching 4.6 points. The agreement called for no jail time, so the judge took it easy on the 48-year-old white man, sentencing him to a year on probation. The judge also withheld adjudication, which means Penninger is not considered a convicted felon. Penninger later violated the terms and could have been sentenced to as long as 5 years in prison. But once again, there was no call for lockup and Howard let the white man go free. People think the face of crime is a black man with jewelry and tattoos, said Leroy Purnell, a law professor and former dean at the Florida A&M University College of Law, a historically black school. People in the criminal justice system are very different than that image. We've got to be able to show a different face. An implicit bias test on the internet, taken by millions of people, found that nearly 3/4 of participants showed at least some negative biases toward blacks. Run by researchers from Harvard, the University of Virginia and the University of Florida, the test reveals that men are more biased than women. Conservatives are more biased than liberals. Every human has biases, said Scott Bernstein, a judge for the 11th Circuit Court in Miami who teaches diversity to judges. The goal is not to rid yourself of biases, but to be conscious of them. As judges, we know to set biases aside. But when you're not aware that this is going on in your brain, that's where trouble comes. A Cornell University study raised similar concerns about the role that unconscious biases play in the courts. Cornell researchers used experiments in 2009 to gauge racial biases among 133 participating judges. A majority of white judges in the group favored whites. Those judges gave harder sentences to black defendants in hypothetical cases if they had been primed with words tied to black culture. The worst thing you can say to a judge is that they're corrupt or biased, especially with regards to race, said Jeffrey Rachlinsky, a law professor at Cornell who helped author the study. But we found that judges are not different than most adults. And most white adults tend to associate African Americans with negative imagery, and so that's what we see in judges, too. They're part of a society that more often associates African Americans with violence and crime. New judges in Florida must complete 90 minutes of training on racial biases within their first 12 months on the job. They are required to take an additional 8-hour course on diversity within 3 years. Some say that is not enough. It took us a lifetime to develop our biases, said Lori Friedel, a University of South Florida criminology professor and expert on bias training. It's not easy to make them go away. A system worthy of respect. Bias against blacks in Florida's courts is shaped, in part, by the makeup of the bench. Out of more than 900 sitting circuit and county judges, 62 are black, or about 7%. Only 28 of those judges preside over serious criminal cases. Based on demographics, it is difficult for black judges to get elected in most corners of Florida. Since Governor Rick Scott took office in 2012, it also has become less likely that blacks will be appointed. 10% of the more than 400 judges appointed by Jeb Bush were black. That compares with just 6% of the more than 200 judges appointed by Scott through 2016. I worry when I see a bench that's predominantly white, said Sierra Torres Speliski, a law professor at Stetson University. There's nothing disqualifying about being white or male. They can be brilliant. I want brilliant judges on the bench. But I worry that there are brilliant minorities as well, and they got dismissed by a nominating process that was biased. The Herald Tribune's analysis of the state's offender-based transaction system, which tracks every criminal case in Florida from arrest to appeal, shows that black judges are fairer when it comes to sentencing black defendants in their courtrooms. Across third-degree felonies, white judges in Florida sentence black defendants to 20% more confinement than whites who committed the same crimes. Black judges, on the other hand, sentence blacks and whites more equally. White defendants receive just 3% more time. Black female judges give out the longest overall sentences, but they also are the most fair. Their average sentences for black and white defendants are dead even, an analysis of third-degree felony data compiled by county clerks shows. When I get on the bench, I see myself as Patrice first, said Circuit Court Judge Patrice Moore, who presides over family court in Pinellas County. I try not to see color. I see people and case numbers. I don't know if it's an anomaly. Not every African American woman is the same. What we have in common is the color of our skin, that we're women and that we're judges. Beyond that, I don't know. But I do think women, in general, are a little fairer. It's in our nature. Legal experts say disparities in sentencing stem from a lack of understanding between cultures. They say some white judges struggle to see potential in a young black man, especially if he already appears disgruntled by the system. During one first appearance docket attended by reporters in Gainesville, the family members of defendants, mostly black, packed the chambers wearing a baseball jersey, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles t-shirt and camouflage Chicago Bulls pajamas. One woman had curlers in her hair. Another man was wearing shorts and knee-high socks stitched to look like stacks of dollar bills. The lawyers, mostly white, assembled in the courtroom wearing traditional dark business suits. Judges are not supposed to consider these stark differences in appearance. But sentencing patterns show it remains difficult for many of them. What these judges should think about is what it would have been like for them when they were 19 to be in front of someone that's culturally completely different and to have their entire life changed because of that, said Robert Hambrick, a defense attorney in Clearwater. Lawyers also cite the need for more cultural understanding among colleagues on Florida's bench. If a white judge interacts with a black judge, that same white judge might look differently at the young black defendant standing before him at a sentencing hearing. He may see the potential that lifted his black colleague, said Kenneth Nunn, a University of Florida law professor and assistant director of its Criminal Justice Center. People you work with, that you deal with as an equal, that you respect, make a difference when you look at potentiality of the kid before you, Nunn said. Nunn, who is black, believes most judges strive to be fair, but the system does not do enough to reduce biases. He says it's the same kind of prejudice within law enforcement that sparked the Black Lives Matter movement. Some deaths, some pain, some suffering is more important than others, Nunn said. All lives matter? No, there is a hierarchy of whose life matters most. We want defendants, individuals who respect the system. But we have an obligation as a community to create a criminal justice system worthy of respect. Transparency. No. By Josh Salmon, Emily L. Cuz and Elizabeth Johnson. Herald Tribune. The state collects massive amounts of data on criminal defendants, everything from race, gender, and date of birth to the name of their attorneys, the presiding judge, their charges, and sentence. The courts use this information to measure how long it takes cases to move through the system and to hire more judges when needed. The Florida Department of Corrections collects similar data on criminal sentencing. It files a report each year showing how many people are incarcerated or placed on probation and how many are sentenced below their minimum recommendation. But neither the courts nor corrections use data to check for racial discrimination on the bench. Judges don't know their own sentencing habits. There is no transparency, said Michael Buchanan, a criminal defense lawyer in Gainesville. It would be nice if there was just a place you can click and see what a judge is doing, sentencing as far as crime and race. Although they are among the most powerful elected officials able to decide on life and death, judges are largely left to govern themselves. The system doesn't have built within it any mechanism for evaluating racial bias, said Brian Stevenson, a lawyer and national expert on social injustice. It's almost like it's indifferent. There's a presumption of dangerousness assigned to black people born out of discretion in sentencing, born out of prosecutorial discretion, born out of law enforcement and police discretion. Defendants in Florida may appeal verdicts believed to be the result of racial discrimination. But the appeals court can only address overt racism. It is difficult for lawyers to prove subconscious bias. The same is true for the Judicial Qualifications Commission, or JQC, the government agency tasked with regulating Florida judges for ethical misconduct, including issues of discrimination. Most of the JQC's investigations are handled in secret, and complaints against judges are kept confidential unless formal charges are brought to the Florida Supreme Court. So it is impossible to determine how many complaints are related to race. JQC staffers argue that the agency is doing its best with the resources available. They say the confidentiality was put in place to protect those filing complaints, not the judges. There were more than 770 complaints filed in fiscal year 2015 to the JQC. 10 resulted in formal charges, but none of them involved racial discrimination. You don't have the good OL boys taking care of their judges, said Michael Schneider, Executive Director and General Counsel for the JQC. There is accountability. We take a lot of heat for going after judges. It's a tricky business. The final check on judges is the electoral process. Judges told the Herald Tribune that if Floridians disagree with their decisions, they can vote them out of office. But given the secrecy of the complaint system and the dearth of statistical information regarding rulings, the overwhelming majority of judges keep their jobs for as long as they like. Some appointed judges have spent decades on the bench without their names ever appearing on a ballot. Nobody has asked any questions of the judge, said Deborah Brodsky, director of Florida State University's Project on Accountable Justice. We have put trust in a criminal justice system with no accountability. For way too long, we simply felt safer thinking the criminal justice system would take care of all of the problems without any oversight. I'm embarrassed, frankly, by the numbers, said Derek Bird, a Sarasota criminal defense attorney, who has handled Charlotte County-related cases. I knew that the system had a disparity between the treatment of blacks and whites. I did not know it was to that degree. We obviously have a long way to go. Howard turned down 5 requests for comment. His judicial assistant cited his busy court schedule, which included a murder trial. When told the nature of the story, she said every case is different, so it's hard to compare them. Critics of the point system say discrepancies jeopardize the fundamental function of the court, which is held together by the perception that it is fair and unbiased. Judicial neutrality is the basis of judicial legitimacy, said Gregory Pingree, a professor at Florida Coastal School of Law in Jacksonville. It's why people follow the laws. Every human has biases. In 2016, the Circuit Court in Jacksonville reassigned Judge Mark Hulsey, who later resigned ahead of impeachment discussions, after allegations that he said all blacks should go back to Africa. Another Florida judge thanked God in open court that a Pakistani doctor on trial did not marry an American woman. In Broward County, a criminal judge asked to be reassigned after saying an attempted murder case was NHI, an acronym for No Humans Involved. The defendant, victim, and all of the witnesses were black. But such examples of overt racism in Florida are rare. Racial discrepancies in sentencing, experts say, more likely involve implicit bias, subtle stereotypes developed through upbringing, schooling, television, and movies. Black men have long been stereotyped as scofflaws. Broadcasts flash images of black suspects lined up in chains and jailhouse orange. Hollywood often casts blacks as criminals. A series of police killings of black men in recent years has exacerbated the divide. TV coverage shows throngs of blacks and whites, on opposite ends of streets or separated by barricades, jeering. Altercations are blasted across social media. They roiled the presidential race. Bias on the bench continued on page 4. In this December 2014 file photo, Citrus County Judge Richard Howard balls his fist during a sentencing hearing. Matthew Beck / Citrus County Chronicle.
Hey, Sheriff, we have a question about why your office, your intelligence division, is investigating private citizens for criminal investigation that happen to be activists that are overseeing your department. Why would you have your intelligence division investigate private citizens? We have done...
For life hating so much.
Sir, we don't hate anyone. We love freedom and we love American people. And government is out of control. That's why you're seeing such a revolt nationwide. Why can't you just answer, why is Susan Edwards, your intelligence division, investigating private citizens? This should not happen.
Are you here to apply for a job?
Possibly I might be applying for a job, but that's irrelevant to my question. Why would you ask that question?
Well, enjoy the fair.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Excuse you?
Excuse me, sir.
So those of you that haven't
Wow.
been on a bike before, we're
Sheriff's
just
getting a little too pushy. You work for us, Sheriff. Just keep that in mind. At one time we respected you, but not with that type of attitude.
County. This is Charlotte County COPWATCH, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheeple up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Charlotte County COPWATCH with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if some, if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think if each one of you subscribers just gave a, let's say, actually, yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, at least I can do it. 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea too that we have is if I got, some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. 47,000 of you so far right now. $1 a day. $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head, help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.